The hearing will come to order. As this hearing is fully virtual, we must address a few housekeeping matters, and I understand the boss is going to be on the call, so I have to follow all the rules. I'd like to remind members that for today's meeting, the chair or staff designated by the chair may mute participants' microphones when they're not under recognition for the purpose of eliminating inadvertent background noise. Members are responsible for muting and unmuting themselves. If I notice you have not unmuted yourself, I will ask you if you would like the staff to unmute you. If you indicate approval by nodding, staff will unmute your microphone. I remind all members and witnesses that the 5-minute clock still applies. If there's a technology issue, we will move to the next member until the issue is resolved and you retain the balance of your time. And to our guests, I'll just suggest that given the 5 minutes, please try to allocate, and I know it's difficult and I apologize, if you can, sort of to the point of recognizing each member has 5 minutes in their question. And as difficult as that is, we appreciate it. You will notice a clock on your screen that will show how much time is remaining. With 1 minute remaining, the clock will turn yellow. With 30 seconds remaining, I will gently tap the gavel to remind members that their time is almost expired. When your time is expired, the clock will turn red, and I will begin to recognize the next member. Finally, House rules require me to remind you that you have set up an email address to which members can send anything they wish to submit in writing at any of our hearings or markups. That email address has been provided in advance to your staff. I am going to keep this opening statement very brief so we can leave ample time for questions. It should be noted that we are honored to welcome the 75th Postmaster General of the United States, Louis DeJoy, today. Appointed by the Board of Governors of the Postal Service, he started his tenure in June 2020. We want to thank you, sir, for being here today. The reason I said that special notice, it has been nearly 20 years since the US Postal Service has testified before this subcommittee. So there's 20 years of catching up to do. But obviously, this hearing could not have come at a more important time, given the extraordinarily vital role of the USPS during the pandemic. We're glad to have this hearing today. By delivering food, medicine, personal protective equipment, and other essential equipment during the pandemic, it has literally saved lives by helping Americans maintain social distance, limiting the spread of COVID, and allowing people to vote safely. Let me say this. Mr. DeJoy, you and I spoke the other day. We recognize there are a lot of issues. Let this be a hearing where we talk about those issues and solutions and, in a sense, cut to the chase. I've had 1,000 postal cases in my district since the beginning of the year. We typically have 500 in a year. That being said, I will tell you that I want to help. I know this committee and Congress wants to help. We want to find solutions working with you. And it's imperative that we restore the effectiveness to the full point necessary and possible for the Postal Service. So with that, I would now refer to Mr. Womack for his opening.
Thank you, Chairman Quigley. Welcome to the committee, Postmaster DeJoy. Over the past year, the Postal Service has faced a lot of challenges, including the coronavirus and its impact on the health of postal employees and their families, significant decline in mail volume coupled with a significant increase in package volume, shortage in airplane and truck capacity, significant winter storms making mail delivery all the more difficult. I will commend the Postal Service employees for their hard work and commitment to deliver mail regardless of the challenges they face. And I've seen it firsthand. Just the other day, after a major snowfall in northwest Arkansas, I was alerted to coming service. Service needs some improvement. Delivery standards have declined, resulting in holiday gifts arriving after the holidays, payments sent through the mail arriving late, resulting in fees and interest charges for many Americans, and challenges for businesses that use the Postal Service to receive supplies and deliver products. In addition, the Postal Service is not on a sustainable fiscal path. While the Postal Service does not rely on taxpayer dollars to fund most of its operations, revenues from the sale of postage, products, and services haven't kept up with the costs. Since 2007, USPS has recorded significant net losses each year, including $9.2 billion in 2020. I understand that without significant reforms, you're projecting to lose $160 billion over the next 10 years. The majority's HEROES bills from this past summer proposed providing the Postal Service with billions of dollars of taxpayer funds without requiring structural reforms. I'm on record as opposing such taxpayer-funded bailouts. I understand you, along with the Postal Service Board of Governors, intend to release a 10-year strategy to get the Postal Service on a sustainable path. It is a welcomed first step, and I look forward to seeing it. The Postal Service has a great history, which began with the Continental Congress appointing Benjamin Franklin, as the first Postmaster General. I want to work with you, Chairman Quigley, and the Authorizing Committee to ensure that the Postal Service becomes financially stable and continues its long history of providing a high level of service. And with that, I look forward to our Q&A, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, Mr. Ranking Member. I now recognize the Chairwoman of the Full Appropriations Committee, Ms. DeLauro.
Thank you very much, Chairman Quigley and Ranking Member Womack, for holding this vital hearing. It has been almost a year since the United States Postal Service Board of Governors selected you, Mr. DeJoy, as the 75th Postmaster General of the United States. Since then, the Postal Service has frankly become wholly unrecognizable from what it once was. Under your leadership, on-time delivery for something as simple as a letter to a loved one declined to just 60% and has still not fully recovered. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, Americans are now relying on the Postal Service for everything: medications, food, bills, and even livestock. But even as this pandemic was putting an enormous strain on the Postal Service, you implemented a number of new rules that led to severe and unnecessary mail delays. We have all heard the stories from our constituents. Some have been forced to pay interest or extra fees because their bills were not delivered on time. Small business owners are losing money in the mail, and those who are sick are waiting days, if not weeks, for life-saving medications. In my own district, I heard from a veteran whose insulin arrived 3 days late and who had to get to the VA to provide the dosage he needed in order to survive. An immunosuppressed constituent of mine waited 17 days for a shipment of medication to go from Main Street in East Haven, Connecticut, to New Haven, Connecticut, 4 miles away. And I heard from a small business owner in Milford who was facing financial hardship because hundreds of client payments have never arrived. Though he has since been able to track down 80 pieces of mail, 50 of which were client payments, and 30 of which were bills he had to scramble to pay. About 200 pieces of mail are still missing. I want to take a page from what my colleague, Congressman Womack, said. I want to commend our postal workers. They know how to deliver the mail. They've been doing it for a very, very long time. What's happened at the post office is unacceptable. And frankly, your leadership of the Postal Service, in my view, has been an utter disgrace. It is simply inexcusable that even after all this hardship, you are working on a new strategic plan that would permanently slow first-class mail and abandon current service standards. And perhaps even more outrageous, even after Congress provided $10 billion to the Postal Service in the CARES Act to help address the impacts of this pandemic, you continue to put the health and safety of your employees at risk. It is my understanding that almost 56,000 postal employees have tested positive and 170 have died. I'm appalled. My constituents are as well. It is time for you to put an end to these delays, restore service and reliability, prioritize the health and the safety of the American people. And if you cannot do that, if you do not want to actually make the Postal Service better, then I do call into question why you took on this job. I am pleased with President Biden's decision to nominate 3 new members of the Postal Service Board of Governors late last month, and I urge the Senate to quickly confirm their appointments, ensuring oversight to stop the damage that I believe you are causing. And with that, let me say thank you to Chairman Quigley and to Ranking Member Womack, and I yield back.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Again, Postmaster General, we appreciate your being here today. Without objection, your full written testimony will be entered into the record. With that in mind, please summarize your opening statement in 5 minutes, if you could. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Quigley, Ranking Member Womack, Chair DeLauro, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for calling this important hearing concerning the Postal Service's fiscal year 2022 budget request. I appreciate the opportunity to also discuss the actions we are taking to put the organization on firm financial footing to ensure that we can fulfill our vital universal service mission and to provide the American people with the service that they expect and deserve in a self-sufficient manner. It is important to note that in regard that the Postal Service is an independent establishment, which by design is supposed to be self-sustaining. In concept, we are required to fund our operations and to fulfill our public service mission through sale of our products and services. It is a common misperception that we are supported by taxpayer dollars. To the contrary, with a narrow few exceptions, the expectation that is built into law is that we will run our business efficiently and in a manner that produces enough revenue to pay our own way. One of the narrow exceptions is that when Congress created the US Postal Service in 1970, it pledged to appropriate funds to pay for the cost of certain subsidized postage that it deemed worthy of public support.
There's only 10.
Such as free mail for the blind and overseas voting. I view this promise as consistent with the mandate that we be self-sustaining, since if Congress required us to undercharge for certain services or to provide other services for free for public policy reasons, it makes sense that Congress should pay for those services or make up the difference. My written testimony details our fiscal year 2022 budget request for these reimbursements, which total $330 million and includes revenue foregone amounts. Let me place our relatively modest but no less justified budget request in context. Much more comprehensive action must be taken if we are to have any hope of revitalizing the Postal Service. The hard reality is that years of financial stress, underinvestment, unachievable service standards, and the lack of operational precision have resulted in a system that does not have adequate resiliency to adjust and adapt to changing circumstances. I expect and do not shy away from your own observations and questions about recent service performance in your home districts. Confronting and understanding the problems with service is an essential diagnostic step toward finding solutions. My time at the Postal Service has been focused on just such a diagnostic process. I acknowledge that our current service performance is unacceptable and that the status quo should be acceptable to no one. But I also believe that the solutions are within reach if we can agree to work together. In that regard, we have developed and will soon announce a plan to revitalize the Postal Service and ensure financial stability and service excellence that embraces our vital public service mission and the continuation of 6-day delivery. Our 10-year strategy will reinforce the Postal Service's obvious strengths and address our obvious weaknesses, and enable us to continue to meet the needs and expectations of the American people and our universal service mission. The key commitments of this plan will include, number one, a commitment to 6- and 7-day-a-week delivery service to every address in the nation, not just because it is a law, but because it is a key ingredient to our future success. Number two, a commitment to stabilizing and strengthening our workforce, especially for our associates who are not yet in a career position. We want every postal employee to have the tools, training, and supportive environment necessary to enjoy a long-term career with us. Number three, a commitment to investing in our network infrastructure, including vehicles, technology, and package sortation equipment. In the weeks ahead, I look forward to sharing more information and engaging in discussions about this strategy with public policymakers, our unions and management associations, our employees, our stakeholders, and with the American people. There is difficult work that is ahead of us to fix the systemic problems that have plagued the Postal Service. But I am confident that together those problems can be solved, and I see a bright future ahead for the Postal Service and the public we serve if we have the collective courage to act. Thank you, Chairman Quigley and Ranking Member Womack, for the opportunity to testify in support of fulfilling funding for our fiscal 22 budget request. I welcome any questions you and the subcommittee may have.
Thank you. We'll begin with questions. Let me just talk about Chicago, because so many of the problems seem to be playing out throughout the whole country, the same issues. Let me ask you point blank. The fact that we have mail service problems, people not getting mail for long periods of time are insufficient, and all the other complaints you got, can you be as specific as possible? Is this a workforce shortage? Is this to a large extent being backed up because the service couldn't handle the dramatic increase in package delivery? Is this because of air service issues? Is it because of anything else mechanical, distribution centers, processing equipment of any sort? So to the extent you can be as specific as possible in Chicago, and as it plays out the same way through the rest of the country, why do we have these severe problems near the holiday, and why are they still playing out?
Thank you, and that's a fair question. And if given the time, I can address it in a robust manner. Number one, our network and financial condition and service have been eroding for years. We have been in a bad business model that has been allowed to exist both by the Congress and by our regulators, and by efforts by previous management teams, for the most part, have been stymied, and in some cases, their own reluctance to take on the challenges that needed to be taken on to address the change. Our performance during this peak period is a result of extreme change in the dynamics of our market, meaning packages, significant increase in package volume, which from a cubic movement standpoint, which is how we go about delivering our service. A tractor trailer of mail would hold 500,000 pieces. A tractor trailer of packages would hold 5,000 pieces. We do not have the ground transport or physical distribution capabilities, both from a space standpoint or equipment standpoint, to handle this. And there have been extreme delays throughout the whole system, starting from the peak period. Now, also, we have had historically turnover in the pre-career aspects of our workforce. This year, we hired 200,000 people and didn't move the top line number of 650,000 employees an inch. Right? Many of the career employees who have leave and were in fact had to deal with the growing reach of the pandemic as we moved from March of last year into the end of this year. It spread more around the country, and we had tremendous more employee availability problems and absenteeism, which was filled by temporary hires. These were almost got to a point where there were day workers asked to operate our machinery in our plants, and they walk in our plants and they see the type of environment that they need to work in, and many just turned around and went home. We had pockets like in Chicago, Detroit, Philadelphia. We have 750 routes. We only had 400 carriers to go out on a day. The pandemic, the Postal Service experienced the pandemic like everyone else. And the final thing is, if we got mail and packages for the most part throughout the nation to our delivery units, we delivered over 98% of the time, over 97% of the time. And that's the strength of the organization. And that's part of why I'm optimistic about how we go about fixing it. But we had days where I delivered 40 million packages in one day, and the next day could only do 30, yet we had 150 million packages in the system because we could not get it to the delivery units. They were caught up in plants, they were caught up in trucks, they were caught up on terminal handling processes with airports and so forth. And with those packages goes mail. And we threw everything we had at it, and it just wasn't enough. System was.
No, and I appreciate that. I'm gonna abide by my own rules and move on. And next questions will be by the ranking member, Mr. Womack.
All right, so mail volume down 42%, package volume up 120%. You've already spoken to how that's impacted your organization. So, I mean, those are numbers that speak for themselves. So my question is, what is it? And maybe I'm asking you to kind of give us a glimpse into your 10-year plan. What is it that we need to do in order, because, you know, coronavirus has caused a lot of people to shop online. I get that. I'm an ex-mayor, so I know the shopping habits of people. And that being the case, I think we've trained people now to shop more online. I am not optimistic that the traffic at the malls that once upon a time, was pretty robust, is ever going to get back to that number, because people now are comfortable shopping in pajamas by logging onto their computer. So what are you doing? What should we be doing in order to be able to adjust to this change in mail volume?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. The first thing I would say, sir, is that while everybody recognizes the decline in mail volume, and that has been happening over the last 10 years, over 40%, and is projected to continue to decline another 35 to 40% over the next 10 years, we have not adjusted adequately enough for that change in our operating structure. We still have many mail sortation machines in our plants. We have transportation that runs 30% utilized around the country to deliver mail. So we have to recognize that and make the changes that are necessary to address that. The second thing is the package volume, which is tremendous more cubic volume that is moving around the country. And as you note, the projections are anywhere from over the next 10 years, 6 years to 7 years, could double. We see consumers ordering smaller things online, getting more into consumables and so forth. And this is where I am optimistic about how we move forward. Our carriers reach, even during the pandemic, 161 million addresses every single day. And we do that at a 98+% hit rate, which is an unbelievable accomplishment and the strength of the organization. And yet our package delivery volume we only deliver about 35% of the packages that are delivered in the country. We need to reorganize ourselves, which is part of what this plan will do to address the marketplace. But we also need to get better at operating our network as a whole. And this plan is about service excellence moving forward at affordable prices. As I said, I'm committed to maintaining 6 and 7 day a week delivery. It's about investing in the organization. Our plan will have some big numbers investing into the organization and workforce, approaching $40 billion. It's spurring innovation for growth, which prior to the pandemic, we were losing ground on the package market. And it's about following the law and becoming self-sustaining. And some of that requires legislation. The Chairwoman Maloney is working on her bill to integrate Medicare which is something that is an unfair burden on the organization, and we would look for everyone's support on that. So I'm
Okay.
optimistic.
All right, I want to move to the second part of my question, and I call it price to delivery model. Is our price to delivery model right? Is it up to date? Is it sustainable? Or how would, and maybe I'm not using the right term, but I call it price to delivery because there's a certain amount of costs that go into getting a package or a letter wherever from point A to point B. So speak to that for me.
So we have two areas that we have. We have competitive pricing, which gets reviewed by which is pretty much in our control. We have the market dominant pricing, which was part of the legislation in 2006 and a big part of our problem over the last 14 years. Right, this was an experiment which really we were frozen in a business model, pricing and volume relationship and cost relationships that were established in 2006. Subsequent to 2006, mail volume dropped out. We addressed the American geography expanded where people live, about 1 million addresses a year, and our cost relationships were totally out of whack, and we were pretty much price capped to CPI. After 10 years, we were supposed to get a ruling. It took 4 years to study that. We finally got the ruling last December, which addressed a lot of the issues going backwards in terms of recognizing the reduction in mail flow. But during that process, it left an extreme amount of damage to the organization. And had this
okay, I'm out of time.
Yeah,
I get it. Thank you very much. I'll yield.
Thank you, sir. I now yield to the chairwoman of the full committee, Ms. DeLauro.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just for the record, and I just looked this up. In 2019, the Postal Service delivered 800 million packages between Thanksgiving and Christmas. The ability of the Postal Service to handle packages is well known with what they've done at holiday times. Post Office delivers more packages to homes than any other shipper. So this notion that packages then have slowed up this process appears to fly in the face of the actual data with regard to the post office. So let me just, I believe there was an attempted assault on the Post Office Service by the previous administration. I appreciate the efforts of the hardworking men and women in the Postal Service to ensure that an unprecedented number of mail-in ballots were delivered on time, an increase of 22 million ballots from the 2016 election. However, these efforts relied heavily on, quote, extraordinary measures like extra transportation and overtime to handle the surge. Let me ask you, does the strategic plan that you're set to release shortly include changes that will allow the Postal Service to better scale its operations of increased use of mail-in voting is the new normal? And in a recent report, your Office of the Inspector General said that you were only able to measure service performance of just over half of the ballots. What steps are you taking to increase that number and ensure that there is visibility for all ballots?
Chair, I thank you for recognizing our ability to deliver packages. We delivered 1.1 billion packages this holiday season, but were tendered probably about 1.5 billion packages, which is what resulted in delays. As with regard to measurement, we have processes to measure, but this is also a part of the election process throughout the states. All 50 states have different rules, regulations. They have different types of mail that they tender to us. If you have a barcode on a ballot, we can track it.
If you just give me a second, because I want to abide by what the chair is doing with regard to time. But my question is, what is your plan going to do with regard to allowing the Postal Service to better scale its operations if, as I believe is the case, there'll be the increased use of mail-in voting, if that's the new normal? What are you doing to change your operation to deal with that fact?
Ma'am, we dealt with the mail-in voting, record mail-in voting that we had last year, 25% or something higher than the 2018 election. We had a 98%, very, very high performance level. It's about 2% of our mail during the process. The capacity to process election voting is there, as I stated, throughout the whole election cycle. And the bigger focus we need to have is on the overall operations, so it doesn't continue to erode our performance. But the election, any amount of election mail that we have, we can handle.
But your own Inspector General said that you're only able to measure service performance of just over half the ballots. Again, my issue is not what's happened in the past, but where are you going in the future with your strategic plan? Because as I take a look at the commentary on your strategic plan, you plan to eliminate a tier of first-class mail in an area that's already struggling. And your plan prevents first-class mail from being shipped by airplane. It doesn't sound to me, you need to let us know what you are doing to deal with what have been the delays, the shortfalls, etc., going forward. That's all we want to know, is what is going to be different going forward than we have in the recent past.
Again, I want to stress the fact that we are adequately prepared to handle election mail. If the chair would like to see higher measurement, that report, I'm familiar with that report, and there's nothing that report is in general talking about we need to work with election boards to get a more collaborative methodology to tender the ballots. We did that quite extensively last year, and we'll continue to do that in the future. But I can only measure what is prepared to be measured. And with regard to the plan will be forthcoming, and we will. There'll be. And one last thing, with regard to service standard change, over 80% of the mail will stay in the same. Especially our 2-day product will remain 2 days. We think we're adequately prepared for any election going forward.
Well, we'll look carefully at the IG's report and then deal with the recommendations. And with that, I apologize to the chair. I've overstepped my time, and I yield.
Never a problem. Thank you, Mr. Amade.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know what, we've kind of touched on the stuff that I was interested in, so I'm going to go ahead and yield back.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Cartwright.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. DeJoy, many of the problems the USPS faces can be traced all the way back to last summer. The chairwoman is correct. Last summer, there were efforts to dismantle mail sorting machines, cut overtime, restrict deliveries, remove blue mailboxes, all in the name of operational efficiency. I have no doubt you'll attempt to deny these actions or justify them as you have previously, but we've all seen the reports, and my constituents did not experience an increase in efficiency in any way. Instead, they experienced delays as well as missing and misdelivered mail, and yet you want to try this again. You've proposed more service cuts, doubling down, instituting higher and region-specific pricing and lower delivery expectations. So I have 3 questions for you. Number one, Americans are clearly relying more than ever on the United States Postal Service than before the pandemic. Why are you doubling down on the policies that have led to massive delays? Number 2, how would doubling down on these policies help create these issues, help Americans receive their mail on time? And number 3, Given the severe issues that the Postal Service has faced since you were appointed Postmaster General, can you explain why you think you are still qualified to hold that position?
So, Congressman, first of all, I don't agree with the premise that you introduced the question on with regard to changes that I've implemented have caused these issues. These, as I said earlier, our network and the financial condition of the Postal Service have been eroding substantially, and we did have to operate in the pandemic just like every other operation in the nation. With regard to the changes that we're looking to make, we're looking to capitalize on our strengths and address our obvious weaknesses. And this plan, the changes that we'll make are about service excellence and affordable prices. It's about maintaining 6 and 7 day a week delivery. It's about investing in the organization and spurring on innovation to grow, and importantly, which this Congress continuously fails to recognize, part of the law is to be self-sustaining, and that is what this board and this management team is trying to address. We suffered almost $10 billion of losses last year. We suffered almost $80 billion of losses over the last 7 years. If I paid all my bills, I'd be out of money tomorrow, and you know, I'm trying to take this board and myself and this management team, we're trying to take seriously the issues that face us, is that we're in a broken business model and changes need to happen. When we roll out our plan, I think any reasonable person will understand the challenges that we face, but they will also see the optimism of the plan. And why should I stay? Because I'm committed to seeing this change. I have the expertise to do so, and I have the tenacity and the stamina to undergo this type of questioning.
Well, Mr. DeJoy, on December 21st, 2020, I wrote you a letter asking how you plan to improve delivery standards given the many concerns that the people in my district in northeastern Pennsylvania have shared with me about their mail service. I received your response, which stated you were doing everything you could to provide timely and efficient service. That was December. Christmas is over. The election is over. It's now March, and things are simply not getting better in northeastern Pennsylvania. What is it that has caused these delays to continue well into March? What is the USPS doing to ensure these delays are resolved as soon as possible? And specifically, how are you dealing with staff shortages to ensure there are enough workers to do the work that is necessary?
A fair question. Throughout the country, in different, especially in urban areas, we have had absentee issues with regard to carriers. But for the most part, throughout the nation, if mail and packages got to our carriers, we delivered at over 98% of the time. We have had we have hired over 200,000 people in less than a year trying to fill positions. We have converted 10,000 people in December. We have not converted people in many, many, many years. So we're very committed to try and stabilize the workforce. It's my number one thing I'm focusing on. I've been working with our union leadership on this to change the trajectory of our turnover in that area. But the rest of the problem, sir, is not at the delivery units. It's in our network. We have standards that require flying planes. We don't own any planes. We overwhelmed all the aircraft that we could have. We were significantly short on aircraft to move volume around. Our trucking network is problematic, but we also overwhelmed that in terms of capacity. We bought every bit of transportation we could get, and it just wasn't enough. Now, with regard to March, we were still delivering peak season volume all through January. We delivered 1.1 billion pieces up to the end of the year, and had it took us January to work it down, and then we got hit with the storms. I woke up, I came in one morning, and the winter storm was there. 71 million addresses potentially impacted. Many of our hubs, that got down to about 20 million. Many of our hubs were frozen. We could not get mail and packages through the network. So the problem, sir, is bigger than just your locality. It's a network operation, and our network is in bad shape.
Mr. Chairman, I have no further questions for the witness.
Thank you. Ms. Stewart, please.
Yeah, thanks to the chairman and ranking member, and of course to the Postmaster General. I do have a couple questions. Before I do that, I'd like to, just express a view that I recognize you took on an enormous challenge, and perhaps there have been mistakes made along the way. I think that's probably true of any of us who would take on such a big challenge. I do think some of the criticism that you've received here today is probably exaggerated. Some of it is unfounded. Again, I think we can do better. I hope you can do better. I think you're clearly committed to doing better. But in my view, too, it's a little bit like assigning a new captain to the Titanic after it's hit the iceberg and then blaming that captain for the damage and the catastrophe that took place before. I mean, the challenge of the Postal Service is a generational challenge. This is something that's been years and years in the making, and it's going to take a little time to fix it. So once again, I want and encourage you to continue to make the reforms that are necessary. But I feel a little bad that some of the criticism that you've received here today, I just think is unfounded and as I said, exaggerated. Having said that, let me ask you a couple questions, and I can ask them both and then let you answer. The first is the ability of someone in China to create malicious drugs, very deadly drugs, fentanyl being the worst example because it's so compressed and so easily shipped via mail. And the reality is that many times that's shipped through the US Postal Service. In fact, it's probably the primary vehicle for these deadly drugs that are created and manufactured overseas to be brought into the country. And I'd like you to address how and what you've done already, and how you intend to address that in the future to make
Congressman Stewart, sorry to interrupt, sir. Could you please turn your camera on per House rules?
Yeah, I've got my camera on here as far as I can tell. And it says my camera is on.
All we see is your name, sir.
Yeah. Well.
Anyway, please continue.
Yeah, I mean, mine says if you want me to stop my video, I'm happy to do that.
There you go. Oh, you were on.
Okay. I don't know what's going on. I'm just going to continue. You can deal with.
Now go ahead.
Talk to me about how you're going to stop the fentanyl, particularly and other drugs, from coming in, and then very briefly address the 10-year plan, how you're going to protect rural postal service. It's very important to my district, important to the West, other rural parts of the country, and we've got to assure our constituents that their rural service will not be interrupted.
Yes. Well, thank you for your question, Congressman. I'll start with the second one first. With regard to rural Americans, as I said, I am committed to 6 and 7 day a week delivery to every address in America. This is and our board is committed. This is a very strong position that we are taking in our 10-year plan. And as you know, sir, when the pandemic hit, we saw that many of these areas, these rural areas, were not delivered to by many private enterprises. And that is what the essence of the Postal Service was founded around, is trying to serve every American. So with regard to that, our plan stays committed to 6 and 7 day a week delivery. And so that's that one. With regard to China and as you know, the STOP Act, we've been working with Senator Portman, the CBP, the State Department, everybody on the STOP Act, and I've been monitoring the traffic coming in. Our inspection service is very, very involved in monitoring traffic coming in from overseas. And quite frankly, it really has come down from China. I don't know I don't remember all the specific numbers. I get briefings every month. Most of the volume now is coming in, winds up coming in, through southern border, and through the mail, I believe. But we are very close. We extended the Stop Act was supposed to be implemented at the end of the year. Got pushed out to March 31st. It's a multiple agency, all of government type of initiative that's going on, and we're very close to having a sampling plan, an identification plan, a compliance measurement system to really address foreign entry into the mail system. We still have, domestic issues that we have to confront.
Okay, well, again, my time has expired. I hope you will concentrate on that. I think it's incredibly important to our culture and society that we not have access to such deadly drugs as simple as a mailbox away. And again, the rural communities are so dependent on you. So thank you. Apologize if my video is not working.
It's on now.
Anyway.
Thank you. We move to Mr. Procan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it. And thank you, Mr. Postmaster, for being with us. Mr. Postmaster, what was your first day on the job? What was that date?
July 15th or 16th.
Okay, so you got about 9 months under your belt?
Yes, sir.
What grade on a scale of A to F would you give your performance as of?
I don't give grades. I just work.
Just go ahead and try. I mean, what do you think?
I don't want to. I don't want to.
Job?
Why don't you give me a grade?
Well, I'm going to ask you, what grade? Are you excellent?
I'm not going to give myself a grade.
Are you satisfactory? Would you say you've done a satisfactory job?
Cartwright needs to mute his microphone. We're getting feedback.
Mr. Postmaster General?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question when he.
I was just trying to ask what grade out of A to F you would assess the performance you've done.
What's the grade spectrum you want me to grade myself
A, B, C, D, F.
Okay. I would give myself an A for bringing strategy and the planning and effort to here. And as I did in my last testimony in Congress as the leader of the organization, I take responsibility for how we have delivered during this season, and I apologize to the American public.
Sure.
And my apology was not just on behalf of this organization. My apology was on behalf of the regulatory boards that have overseen us and this Congress.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to reclaim my time. So you're saying an A. That would be excellent. I'm looking at the Inspector General report about your performance. They said that you communicated primarily orally, which resulted in confusion and inconsistent application of operational changes. They said you implemented changes without completing a study or analysis of the impact of changes. They looked at performance of first class postage delivered, went down to below 80%. First class pre-sort, first class packages and priority all declined in performance. When there was a court order asking you to roll back some of those changes, we actually improved the delivery times on these changes that you made, from dismantling equipment to not paying overtime to not hiring an adequate amount of people at holiday season, your organizational structure, and more. So let me ask two questions, and I'll ask them together and you can answer them together. First one is, do you really think that is excellent service, for the first question? And the second question is, let me ask you specifically about my state of Wisconsin, because unfortunately my numbers were worse than the national numbers. So in Wisconsin, our first class mail delivery dropped to a low of 63.69% the week of December 19th. And outside of some challenges from the holidays, the week of September 19th, it was 77%, while the national rate was at 84%. So first question is, do you think you deserve an excellent grade? Second, are there specific problems that are causing delays in Wisconsin, and what are you doing to address those?
So I'll take the second one. There are specific things that are affecting mail being delivered in Wisconsin and mail being delivered around the rest of the nation. I can't get the mail there. All right. I have more mail than I have ability to transport it throughout the nation. I have more mail-in packages than I have the ability to process in our plants. And as we were coming off that big peak volume, we ran into, we had a storm. So that is the majority of the.
So if I can just interrupt for a second, Mr. Postmaster General. So we do get storms in Wisconsin. We've had them since I had hair. I have a similar haircut, so I think you know what I'm talking about timeline-wise. It's been a while, but
so therefore this situation is new to you about having a bad mail service in Wisconsin?
Oh, no, it is new, the bad service. Snow isn't new in Wisconsin, but under your leadership, bad performance has been unfortunately increased in Wisconsin, and I'm trying to get that. I know that you've taken, and some of this happened prior to you, taking some of the sorting and processing outside of various parts of the state, but it was pretty clear that our rates are pretty awful. So you're excellent, your grade A service. Why is it having such a bad impact to Wisconsin?
Well, I think, well, first of all, I disagree with how you interpreted the OIG's report and what the OIG's report says, okay? Because many of these things with removing collection boxes, removing sorting machines, which were 30% underutilized. Even the collection boxes that were moved, there are regional and local practices that enable those things to happen. Been going on for many, many years before I got here. And it was incorrectly associated with my directive and had no impact on mail delivery. So we're focused on the wrong things. The thing that I did do, sir, was try and get the trucks to run on time. We had a COO, 7 area VPs. They put together a plan to try and run the trucks on time. It failed. We eventually recovered after 2 or 3 weeks. It had nothing to do with federal orders, judge orders, and so forth. So you're putting together a whole bunch of activity, which the Postal Service does endeavor in. We have 650,000 people and deliver to 161 million addresses a day, and you're conflating a lot of things, sir, to come to my grade. So I want to stay with my position.
Sorry. And I appreciate that. Let me move on to Mr. Joyce, please.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Postmaster DeJoy, first off, let me say in Northern Ohio, according to your own statistics, we were the 3rd worst in the country in the 3rd quarter of last year. But I'm not going to beat a dead horse. I understand it. You had problems, and I understand what you're saying with the symptoms of that problem. However, during Christmas time, the local TV station was showing trucks lined up outside the Cleveland, Maine post office. And then internally, there were mail stacked on top of each other in a problem with workers or whatever, and people were receiving those delays. I know that you're working on a 10-year system of trying to get the strategy of trying to cure many of the problems we're hearing here today. Could you enlighten us on what that 10-year strategy looks like?
The plan, I can. The plan focuses on service reliability at affordable prices, and it maintains 6- and 7-day-a-week delivery. As we back up from that, we have had significant issues in the alignment of our network. Most of our network is built out to service mail. And we have a increasing package business, and a package business that we think we know will continue to grow. And the American people have shown through the pandemic that they like to use the United States Postal Service for package delivery. So we have a significant alignment to make in how we run our network, because and I'm optimistic it's doable. But we have to make change. If we don't make change, this will continue. The pandemic and the service impacts that we had over the last several months are a view of what's to come if we don't make change. We could be running trucks around the country with 10 pieces of mail on it and continue to have package business erode as it was doing before the pandemic. So we need to make some big changes. It involves investment in new larger facilities, new equipment, new package sortation equipment. It does involve a service standard change. so the service standards that we have now have not been met in the last 7 or 8 years. They're not achievable in the current environment. We cannot go to California from New York in 3 days without going on planes, and we don't own planes.
Fair enough. I get those logistic problems, but if I'm not mistaken, part of your business model with these packages has been the last leg, if you will, and working those packages into the rural areas where it's not cost efficient for UPS or FedEx or Amazon or other delivery services to go. What's your plan for the rural, if you're trying to condense the system, what's your plan for those rural areas in your 10-year strategy?
So I am very, very committed, sir, to the rural areas. And the plan that you're talking about with regards density, that the private carriers were going after dense areas and packages and leaving the Postal Service to do rural. And that's where I get back to the standpoint that we're only doing 35% of the deliveries in the nation. Our plan is about growing in that business, and the rural areas will be. This board, myself, and this management team are very, very committed to keeping our service, to rural America. And when we roll out the plan, you will see that a big part of this is to attain financial sustainability and have revenue growth to help offset. To become self-sustaining, which is part of the mission. There's two things in the legislation that we have: be self-sustaining and deliver 6 days a week. And we're going to continue to do that. And we think that those are very those are things to be proud of as an organization, and they're achievable. But we need to make other change. We cannot stay where we are right now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield back at this time.
Thank you. Ms. Lawrence, please.
She's not there.
Okay. Ms. Torres.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, thank you for coming before our committee. I want to associate myself with the concerns of my colleagues regarding mail delivery and the unraveling of machines during a time where we needed them the most. Even though you say that 30% they were not being utilized at 30% of the time. I want to move on, though, from that and try to make you a little more comfortable and address other issues. You are our guest in our committee. Our committee is in charge of appropriating the funds that you need in order to operate the post office. So I'm going to bring up two issues. Number one, in my experience, has been that people, the poorest of the poor have a much higher use for the post office. They receive a lot of their mail, their checks, payments through checks in the mail. They utilize it more because many of them do not have bank accounts or other means of delivery. They don't have set up accounts with other services. My hometown of Pomona, a city when I was the mayor of 163,000, population of 163,000 people, an adjacent city population of about 30,000 people. We're looking at two cities, an affluent middle class and a very low working class community. On the one community where I live, a post office, a small community post office was shut down completely. The only post office that is left in my community is in a terrible, dilapidated state. Here's, some of the photos. We have mailboxes that are out of service. This is the welcoming that they get in my community versus the beautiful post office in an affluent city with 30,000 residents. Additionally, the hours of operation are not the same. So you have people that are having to drive 40, 50, 60 miles one way to work, and don't get home till about 7, 8 o'clock at night, and the post office is closed. So limited access for them. I'm very concerned about that. I'm very concerned at the post office denial to clean up this mess. The post office the image of the post office represents the federal government. That is not the image that I want of the federal government in my community. And without objection, I'd like to ask that these photographs be submitted for the record. Secondly, you are not prepared
Without
to answer
objection.
this question, but I do want to put it on the record because I would like to have a conversation with you moving forward. I have serious concerns about the workplace environment at the Santa Ana District USPS, which serves much of my district. Over the years, I have spoken with employees who voice concerns over numerous issues: workplace harassment, retaliation for filing complaints with HR, supervisors who are not properly trained when they are promoted. Instead of holding them accountable for retaliating against employees, they are rewarded by giving them promotions. An ongoing issue of managers having personal relationships with employees, which is, that is unacceptable. That is unacceptable behavior. So what is being done at the national level to address this workplace misconduct? Obviously, we need proper training, improved training, and we cannot simply move a bad employee and transfer them to another facility for them to continue to sexually harass or abuse other employees. So those are my concerns. I'm going to give you, there's not much time. I hope that we can follow up and have a longer conversation around it.
Well, I mean, the points that you that you make are very, very important ones, are reflective of historical circumstances and something that we're very much focused on moving forward. Underinvestment in our retail facilities around the nation is something I'm this board and the management team were very, very concerned about, and that is in our plan. Our employee turnover is unacceptable, and it is something that has been around for a number of years, and it's something I'm very committed to working on. And I would love to hear your thoughts going forward, and we could set up a phone call or something. I think you will see that we're pretty aligned. We're pretty aligned on trying to make improvements to the organization.
I'd like to follow up personally with you, sir, because I understand these are sensitive concerns that I have. But my role here on the Appropriations Committee is to support a budget request moving forward. And I want to be on the record that I cannot do that given the circumstances that I have experienced. I yield back.
But if I could add to that just one thing, and hopefully you will reconsider. The part of the reason for the situation where we're in is we lost almost $10 billion last year, $8 billion the year before, and on and on and on. We have many unfunded mandates within that are put on us by Congress. There are many limitations that are put on us by Congress and our regulatory board. So I would ask that you reconsider. This is a small amount of money here for the blind and for overseas voters. I understand all your concerns, and look, I can assure you we're trying to address them, but pulling money away from us is not is really not going to help.
We encourage and thank you for agreeing for that communication. I do need to go forward. Ms. Lawrence is now recognized.
Thank you for being here again. It's my understanding last week the United States Postal Service announced the following organizational changes. You're consolidating 67 postal districts into 50. New district territories will be aligned with state boundaries. Districts will align with the communities the Postal Service serves and provide similar boundaries for employees and customers. It goes on and on. Your predecessor, when she had a plan to change and reorganize the Postal Service, she actually came and gave a briefing to the Oversight Committee, which you know I'm on, which gives oversight and approves the operational issues with the Postal Service. You have denied us that. And it continues to question your leadership because you are new to the Postal Service, but you're doing this massive sweeping organizational change. I know what that feels like because I was a Postal Service for 30 years. When you reorganize at that scale, you are literally slowing down operations. Everyone's trying to figure out who's on first. You got to go through a whole selection process for new people. And you're doing this on top of you already being challenged with not figuring out why you continue to have the service issues, which, sir, I disagree with you. We've never had the service issues that I'm seeing. I have worked for the Postal Service. I've never seen trucks backed up for miles to get into a facility. And the responsibility of all these things that you have mentioned does rest on your shoulder. I would give you the grace period, and I want to be very clear about this. If you wanted to correct your problems with retention so you could have a stable workforce before you going in and just tearing everything up, you know you were hit hard because in the middle of an election and in a pandemic, you were taking out boxes, you were changing overtime policies and all these things. And the entire country responded to that and said, what are you doing? Because unlike the United States Congress, the Postal Service has over a 90% approval rating. It's because the Postal Service touched every American 7 days a week. And they trust that delivery. And now I get calls, and you have gotten them too, where we literally have not delivered mail but once or twice a week to a community. And for them, that is unsettling. That's not the norm. And at minimum, Mr. Postmaster General, the courtesy and the respect of the organizational structure to come into the Postal Service and to the United States Congress to give a briefing and not subject us to sitting at home reading a press conference or seeing it on TV. Because right now we're all talking to you about our challenges in our community and in this country, and all you have, I have a plan. No one here knows what it is. And can you tell me in my time that's left, where is the analysis of your changes, what will have on morale? Because we already have, you said we have this issue, we have this turnover on morale, on sustaining delivery, because while you're redrawing the lines and talking about trucks and our vehicle inventory, while you're restructuring these lines, because every time you change, and you know this, every time you change a logistical process for a truck to deliver mail to a facility, you have built-in mistakes, missed deliveries, because you have to connect all of those logistical changes, those boundaries that I talked about. You have to change processes within the plant to allow that dispatch to meet the delivery of the truck. And I haven't gotten anything like that from you. And I sit also on this committee that has the responsibility to appropriate funds and on government oversight for the Postal Service. So I will ask that question and tell you I am going to use all the power I have to require you to stop doing press releases on massive changes and to at least give the United States Congress the courtesy of knowing your plan.
Congresswoman, you are well known and respected within the Postal Service for your career and your your position today. But honestly, the Postal Service of today and the condition we are in is not the Postal Service of 2008 when you retired. We are in dire financial crisis.
But sir,
And
when I
change,
left the
and
Postal
we are
Service,
not positioned, to serve the market.
it has
That
continued to monitor what is happening. So
But
I'm not naive, sir.
I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
I said I am not naive. When I left the Postal Service, I came to Congress and have had responsibility for 8 years of the operations of the Postal Service and have my thumbprint on what's going on. So please don't imply that I'm ignorant to what's going on.
I am not saying you're
Listen to
naive.
having responsibility of hearing the voices of the people in the United States cry about the service.
With regard to the organizational change, this has been worked since August by leadership in the organization, established 30-year people within the organization. The previous organization structure has led to many of the problems that we have today. There's a whole, there's a number of reasons that basically had 7 or 8 people running the 600,000 person organization, which created a lot of confusion, lack of clarity, and inability to implement change. This has all been worked on through many people throughout the organization, has been planned, and we did the proper notice that we were supposed to do, to the Congress. But the point I'm making with 2008 is we don't have another 10 years ahead of us if we don't get moving on change. And that is what
I'm sorry, and I know that I'm sorry. I just have to make sure as we try to get to a mini second round. So I need to move on to Ms. Kirkpatrick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for having this hearing. Excuse me. And thank you, Mr. DeJoy, for being here and helping us out with the committee. As you may know, I represent Southern Arizona, including parts of Tucson. So back in 2011, the Postal Service moved to consolidate the Cherry Belle Processing Center in Tucson and targeted it for permanent closure. Fortunately, this closure did not come to fruition, thanks to a coordinated effort in Tucson and throughout the state to demonstrate Cherry Belle's value. That said, the facility lost its postmark in 2013 and has been threatened with further consolidation ever since. Further, the US Postal Service has chosen to ship postage from Tucson to Phoenix for processing, and then it goes back to Tucson. So this means the whole state relies on the processing in Phoenix, which has led to problems that were exacerbated by the pandemic. These problems will only get worse as the population in Tucson and throughout Arizona continues to grow at a rapid pace. In my view, it is no longer feasible to forego a processing operation in Tucson itself. So last week, I joined with Senator Sinema and other members of our delegation to send you a letter that goes into greater detail on this issue. The letter requests that you move to reserve the partial consolidation of Cherry Belle in Tucson in light of the problems we identified in our letter. So I have 3 questions, Mr. Chairman. My first question is, will you commit to refraining from further consolidations at Cherry Belle and give serious consideration to reversing the consolidation that has already occurred?
Congresswoman, no, I will not commit to anything, but we are very, very engaged in evaluating, growing and future conditions of population around and how we service that population. And while, as you said, Arizona is a growing state, we plan to get on that. We plan to have all our service as we design it to be at 95%, and will appropriately position facilities, transportation, and resources to get to that level. With regard to the specific site and where it is right now and what happened in 2011, I would need to get back to you on that. But I mean, the big thing to take away from this, if there are people in need, we're going to reach them at a high performance level, and we need to, but we do need to recast that expectation of what it is that we're able to do, because we're losing a lot of money.
Thank you for your answer. I appreciate that. I appreciate the budgetary concerns that you have. My second question is, and you partially answered this, will you commit to taking in population growth when you're considering further consolidation or closures?
Absolutely. We love population growth. We know we have to go where there's people, and that's a big part of how we plan to grow. In this plan, I will say, this plan has some $20 billion of growth in it, and it's dealing with the changing economy and reaching out to where the people are with the appropriate services and a reliable and a reliable time frame. So I suspect, based on what I hear and know, that Arizona is going to be in good shape going forward.
Yeah, well, good. And part of my district is rural, and I represent lots of veterans who live in rural Arizona, and they rely on the Postal Service to get their medications. Many of them live in areas where there's no community health center, no doctor, and you've just done a really good job for our veterans, and I want to applaud you with that. So, my third question is, do you think it's efficient to ship Tucson's postage up to Phoenix for processing and then ship it back to Tucson for distribution?
So it may be when we're done with our analytics. It depends on the density of mail, the traffic flows that we have. But the key thing that we want to be committed to is, what is our service standard, and are we making it at 95% of the time? And from that, and as I said earlier, if we get mail and packages to our carriers, to our delivery units, it's going to get there 98% of the time. It's getting there. And the problem and the cost of our the cost of our network, I mean, that's costly to do that, but that's legislated, and that's something we're committed to. The cost of moving mail and packages around and not having the right equipment and network and running underutilized is what drives our costs. So it may be that that's the solution for getting the 2-day mail there. But as you begin to grow, as the communities begin to grow, we change, and that's a key thing. We have failed to evolve over the last 10 years. In terms of our strategy. If we did incremental things every year as this was happening, more incremental, we'd be in a better shape, and it wouldn't have to be where we're at right now.
And I thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you, Ms. Postmaster. We're going to try to do a third round. And to my colleagues, please try to stick to a 3-minute question period, if you could, please. So we can get as many people to be able to ask questions as possible. Ms. Postmaster, very quickly, there's been much talk about your new fleet and the fact that such a small percentage of it is an electric fleet. And I know that there's limitations, as you've described, in terms of the infrastructure to have the charging and so forth. But it seems that we've tied our hands. If we purchase a fleet that's really meant for the last 100 years, right? And by the time this fleet will have served its purpose, very few cars will be operating in the same manner. And at the same time, here we are as a Congress talking about an infrastructure package. It would seem that before you go forward and lock things into a plan that's hard to change, you have the communication with us to talk about how to work together toward this end. And I know there's an issue between where these vehicles are built. That's not the question here. The question is, moving forward.
I'm very, very glad you asked me that question. I think there's a misunderstanding out there. In fact, I penned a letter to Congress to explain. We are very, very excited about having a full fleet, or to the greatest extent we can, electric fleet. And the decision but we're also facing, we have a 30-year-old fleet, and they're catching on fire. We need trucks. The 10% was getting us in a position to engage in electrification of our fleet. We have a year to decide what the actual volume is, but we have the 10% was about $500 million, which we don't have to kick off the study, engineering, and the plant building for an electric fleet. These drivetrains are convertible, so if we were able to get the funding, we would be able to maybe of the first buy go 50% electric. But there's a huge infrastructure cost associated.
No,
with
I get that. And let me cut to the chase. Look, and I get what you're saying. You're talking about unfolding a plan as well. Some of the things that you have supposed in that plan may alter given your discussions with Congress. So this is just one example, and we're very limited on time. And I ask you consider that as you unveil your plan for the future, that you take into consideration some of those assumptions you might have would be altered if Congress said, well, that's not what we want. We're willing to help to avoid that eventuality. That's the only point.
And we would welcome the help with regard to that matter, sir. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Womack.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have any further questions, and in the interest of time, I'm going to yield my time back and thank the Postmaster General for his time today. Thank you.
Thank you. I would move on to Mr. Cartwright.
Just one question, Mr. DeJoy. The USPS has this pre-funding requirement for healthcare and pensions for many years into the future. That was enacted in 2006. Successive members of top management at the Postal Service have expressed a wish that were not the case, which is a burden that no other governmental related agency faces. And last year in the U.S. House, we passed the USPS Fairness Act, which had more than 300 co-sponsors, including more than 6 Republicans. What is your position on that, Mr. DeJoy? Do you think it's advisable that we pass that? And will it help with budgetary problems?
That's a very important question and a big part of our plan, sir. I've been working with our team here, with our union leadership, to get two things out of legislation. One is the integration of Medicare and eliminating the pre-funding requirement. I've been up to on the Senate side, on the House side, speaking with different members. It's very important. It's about $50 billion to us over the next 10 years, and we hope that the Congress sees this through. It's very, very important to our future.
Thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Joyce.
He had any other questions?
Okay. Mr. Pocan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Postmaster General. I just want to make sure I'm clear on that last part, because I do think we have this unusual requirement that you have to have about pre-funding health benefits 75 years into the future. I've been a business person for over 30 years. You've been a long-time business person. I don't know of another federal agency, or quite honestly, a business that requires 75-year pre-funding of health benefits, and that creates an artificial problem for your agency. So are you committed to getting rid of that pre-funding if Congress will work with you?
Sir, very, very important, and the steps are important too. And thanks for the opportunity here. First, most important thing is requiring the integration of Medicare. That is going to be somewhere in the $30 billion thing. That's the first step. And then the second step is eliminating the pre-funding requirement, which is about $13 billion to us over the next 10 years. Anything you can do to help us with that, the whole organization would really appreciate. And it's a big part of our plan, and we're working it hard.
I give you an A grade on that answer. I want you to know that.
I'll take it.
Last thing, and I'll yield back after this. Very happy that the contract for the vehicles is going to Oshkosh, Wisconsin. They're an excellent provider, and we're strongly supportive of that. So thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Pocan, are you through?
Yeah, I yielded back, Mr. Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. It broke up for a second. Ms. Lawrence.
Yes. You said something really important, Mr. DeJoy. You said that you wanted to work with the Postal Service when it came to legislation that will have an impact on your financial obligation when it comes to funding, pre-funding of Medicare, Medicaid for your employees. That is the point. If you don't walk away with anything else, and lately you've been pretty combative when you've come to these hearings, the one thing I want to stress to you is that you do need to work with Congress. The Postal Service is an independent agency, and I'm very much aware of that. But when you make independent decisions, and every member you talk to have had the discussion and calls to our office to tell us how they're not satisfied with the service. We and I have been working very hard to relieve you of that financial burden so the Postal Service can become stable. But if your position is that we have no value, you insult the fact that we're not sitting in the Postal Service. You've only been there for a few months. You retired from your industry in 2018 or whenever you left, to say that you were not qualified because all the experience that you had left when you left your organization. You would feel offended and tell me how qualified you are to sit in the seat you're in. So I'm telling you that this has to be a partnership. And again, I will stress, coming before Congress and the Oversight Committee and to this body to outline your plan. If your plan is one that will work, improve standards, because what we were told is that you're going to reduce the delivery standards and suggest that we raise the cost of postage. And that's not acceptable. But if there is a plan that supports modernization of the Postal Service, if it's a plan that's going to help us to keep a workforce, then we can work together. I don't want to be in this position again where we're going tit for tat and you seem annoyed and arrogant about answering the questions. We must work together because the Postal Service is bigger than you and I in the short period of time that you'll be serving and the 30 years that I put into it. And I pledge to you today that my objective, sir, is to make it where we have a Postal Service that works for the American citizens and one that we both can be proud of. And I'll yield back, sir.
Thank you.
I appreciate those comments, Congresswoman, and I will work to have further discussion with the Congress as we move forward with the plan. And happy to meet with you. And yes, there are times when where I leave these sessions, I'm a little embarrassed about my behavior. But I would also offer, I've been accused of many things every time I come in front of the Congress. And I am a human being, and I am trying to do the right thing. And I apologize to you if I have offended you in some way. I didn't really mean to. I meant to get my points across because they're very, very important, to the organization. So I look forward to speaking with you again in the future on the details of our plan. And thank you for your comments.
I appreciate both of your comments. It's helpful. Ms. Torres, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to yield some time to our guests to, we didn't have a whole lot of time for you to answer my concerns, and I understand that they're delicate, and we may not be able to discuss them openly, but I want to yield my time to you in case you want to cover anything. Certainly the dilapidated state of the post office in my home city and threats to close another post office in the city of Ontario that has the community, very nervous.
Yes, ma'am. I will go back and look at the details of your district, but I will say on all those aspects, and you're talking about employee morale, which leads to employee behavior. You're talking about how we represent ourselves and our physical assets for communities, and it gets up into our service. This is where the organization is at right now, right? And it's been a long time coming, I think when we get our plan is about improving every aspect of that. So there is a tremendous, we're earmarking $40 billion to reinvest in our into the organization. A great deal of that is in our retail centers. Trying to get our pre-career turnover rate down to under 40-something%, which is where perhaps the situations that you're talking about, where they really begin where they happen the most. It may not be in our long-term career employees, but we have basically a two-tier system. While it should be an apprenticeship that leads to long-term success, we need the structure for viability, financial viability. We could have managed it a whole lot better, and are going to, as we move forward. Long term, we are looking at our interaction with the American public. We're trusted, but I want to be used. This plan is about being used more and about being modern and being reliable at 95% in everything that we say that we do. So I sense I appreciate your concern, and I sense your interest and empathy for that environment. And I promise you that there's something on the top of our list and our plan, and I look forward to working with you to get some more insight on specifically the specifics of what you're talking about.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you so much. Mr. Womack, do you have any concluding remarks?
I am finished for the week.
I completely understand. Mr. Postmaster General, we want to thank you for being here today. I think you can understand the passion and the interest this issue has created, and we have our moments, but I do believe there was some connection today and some communication, and that's extraordinarily important. So we want to thank you for being here. We will now conclude today's hearings. I ask members to submit any remaining questions into the record. Mr. DeJoy asks that you respond to the additional written questions in a timely fashion. And with that, the subcommittee stands adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.